Where's Jess?
Who is Jess?
You're fucking me.
2 weeks ago, Vida was just an ordinary worker, struggling to make ends meet and sharing a cramped apartment with her roommate, Jess. By chance, she got invited to a fundraising gala, where she saw Slater, a tech industry billionaire. Jess, noticing how smitten Vida looked, suggested they sneak into the event. After getting all dressed up, the two transformed into glamorous and stunning women, ready to mingle with the wealthy. At the gala, Vida couldn't take her eyes off the charming man on stage. Almost unconsciously, she began walking toward him, only to accidentally bump into a waiter. It was a mortifying moment, and people around them started to laugh. But then, a man stopped in front of her and kindly helped her up, diffusing the embarrassment with ease. Vida found herself even more captivated by his charm, and the man, seemingly intrigued by her as well, introduced her to several of his wealthy friends. He also gave them a taste of the luxurious life of the elite. Vida cherished the brief encounter and regretted not asking for his contact info. But just as she was thinking this, the man came running back.
Look, I don't want to sound, you guys want to come?
Living in the lower ranks of society, Vida and Jess couldn't pass up the chance to experience the life of the rich. Without hesitation, they boarded a private plane with a group of strangers. They were headed to a private island. The moment Vida laid eyes on the island, she told herself she had to make the most of this opportunity. To her, this place was paradise, sun-drenched skies, lush greenery, and red-roofed mansions that screamed luxury. The girls were dying to move in right away. So when Slater asked them to surrender their phones, they didn't think twice. Soon, they were settled into the mansion.
Everybody say, making memories! Making memories!
On this island, everything food, clothing, shelter, was provided by Slater. To Vida, this place was heaven on earth, free from the daily grind of worrying about expenses. She was completely engrossed in the lavish lifestyle and hadn't yet noticed the creeping danger that was quietly closing in. She sprayed a little, enjoying its fresh, pleasant scent. On the bed, a pure white outfit had already been laid out for her. But then, something terrifying happened. An old woman suddenly appeared behind her. Vida tried to speak to her, but the woman said nothing. She just kept repeating something over and over.
Huh?
Red Rabbit!
Vida wanted to ask what it meant, but the woman only stared at her with a stern expression before abruptly turning and leaving. Vida brushed it off, dressed in the prepared outfit, and headed out to meet her friends. Jess couldn't believe their luck, marveling at how they had ended up in such a luxurious setting. Vida chalked it up to the eccentricities of the rich. On their way, they stopped to ask two men for directions, but the men just stared at them without responding. At first, the girls found it strange, but they were too caught up in the excitement to care for long. All 5 girls gathered, gossiping, and enjoying themselves. Free cocktails, endless supplies of expensive fruit, it was pure indulgence. Everyone let go and enjoyed every moment without restraint. Later, Vida and Slater took a stroll across the grass, talking about how to heal emotional wounds. Slater, who had been in therapy for years, listened as Vida confidently suggested that forgetting was the best cure. At 8 p.m., the island's power shut off, right on schedule. They gathered around a table for dinner. Vida accidentally spilled soup on her white dress, but Slater stepped in and helped her clean up the mess. After dinner, a man named Jack introduced a new drink. Vida, always daring, volunteered to be the first to try it. It was a deep blue liquid, only needing a few drops to take effect. As soon as she drank it, her mind blurred, and she was lost in a dreamlike state. The girls were all swept up in their own reveries, oblivious to what they were doing. A man watched them from a distance, ensuring nothing unusual happened before walking away. Late into the night, the girls returned to their rooms. Vida, about to sleep, noticed something odd. Her white dress, which had been stained at dinner, was now spotless. Could it all have been a hallucination? Even though something felt off, she didn't dig deeper and quickly fell asleep. The next day, the dreamlike life continued. The blacktail tuna belly they had for breakfast was world-class. The man responsible, Cody, was pursuing Sarah. He was proud of the knife he used, a sharp blade he had brought back from Okinawa, Japan. He treasured that knife. Here, everyone seemed carefree. After taking a dip in the pool, Vida spotted the old woman in the woods, this time catching snakes. The woman smiled at her, but Vida found it unsettling. Still, aside from that, everything seemed normal. But by the next morning, things started to get strange. Jess couldn't find her lighter, and Cody's prized knife had gone missing. Neither had any recollection of what had happened the previous night. Jess searched the entire day but came up empty-handed. At dinner, with everyone gathered around the table, Jess asked who had taken her lighter. It was then that Sarah revealed it, pulling the lighter from where she had hidden it in her clothes.
I don't even remember taking it. This boy got write my name on this fucking thing?
After dinner, the party continued, but suddenly, a scream caught everyone's attention. Jess had been bitten by a snake hiding in the grass. Slater rushed over, dealt with the snake, and assured Jess she would be fine. However, as she stared at the wound, Jess couldn't help but worry and wanted to leave the island for medical help. Slater repeatedly told her there was nothing to worry about. Feeling uneasy, Jess was comforted by Vida, but after days of reckless indulgence, Jess began to sense something was off about the island.
Can't you feel it? There's something wrong with this place. Please. The first time in my life I'm here. And I'm not invisible, so please.
Despite her concerns, Jess decided to stay with Vida. However, later that night, Jess experienced another strange occurrence. Her nose started bleeding, and she appeared dazed. The next morning, Vida woke up early and wandered around the island. She discovered a small cabin and, inside, found several identical red paper bags. As she curiously approached the bags, the old woman from before mysteriously appeared behind her, calling her Red Bunny, just like last time. Intrigued by the bottle in the old woman's hand, Vida asked about it. The old woman told her to keep quiet and handed her a drink of green liquid. Vida took a sip, and immediately, a burning sensation filled her mouth and nose. It was the strongest liquor she had ever tasted. Curious about what was in it, Vida's mood quickly shifted shifted when the old woman lifted a white cloth in the sink. Horrified, Vida fought the urge to vomit and fled the cabin. That night, the 5 girls ran across the grass, laughing and shouting. But soon, one of them questioned why they were running. None of them knew. They shrugged it off, laughing again, and eventually collapsed onto the grass, falling asleep. Vida's memories of the night were fragmented. She vaguely remembered Jess telling her to hide the knife. The next morning, Vida woke up to find her sheets stained with blood from her nose, and dirt stuck beneath her fingernails. Everyone looked rough that morning. Heather's hair had been mysteriously cut into blunt bangs, Sarah's arms were bruised, and Lucas sported a black eye, as if he'd been in a fight. None of them could recall how it happened. They chalked it up to roughhousing from the night before. Slater suggested they go out to sea to fish, but the girls were too exhausted. The guys left, while the girls stayed behind to rest. Before leaving, Slater gave Vida a tender kiss. The girls spent the afternoon doing face masks, but when Sarah asked for a lighter, Vida suddenly realized Jess was missing.
Where's Jess?
Who is Jess?
Okay.
You fucking serious?
The 3 girls had no memory of Jess. No matter how much Vida pressed them, they all insisted they didn't know anyone by that name. Desperate, Vida asked Slater's assistant, Dace, but her response was the same. Vida's dread deepened. Determined, she went to her best friend's room, but when she opened the door, it had become a storage closet. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She distinctly remembered coming to the island with her friend. How could she have vanished without a trace? In a panic, Vida slapped her own face, trying to snap herself out of what felt like a nightmare. As she stumbled, she accidentally bumped into a mirror, causing a specially designed knife to fall out from behind it. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was Sarah, who had found a lighter with Jess's name on it, proving Jess had indeed existed. But why had they all forgotten her? Vida explained that every morning, she woke up with dirt under her fingernails. Sarah, too, had been feeling uneasy. She had woken up with mysterious bruises all over her arms. They both had come to the island believing they were with a group of close friends, but through their conversation, Vida realized they had all been strangers before arriving. The 2 girls finally understood the strangeness of the island, but they still had no idea how their memories were being erased. Vida suddenly remembered the strange little cabin, and this time, she and Sarah went there together. Inside, they found the gift bags, each containing a perfume labeled Desideria. They realized the perfume might be connected to what was happening. They thought about calling the police, but all their phones had been confiscated by Slater. After calming down, Sarah pointed out that Vida was the only one who still remembered Jess. The other 3 girls had completely forgotten her. But why? Vida went over everything again in her mind. She remembered that Jess had been bitten by a snake and that she herself had drunk the bottle of liquor mixed with snake venom in the old woman's cabin. Maybe the venom was the key to restoring their memories. Desperate to recover what they'd lost, Sarah grabbed the bottle and took a big swig. But it would take time for the memories to return, and they started to worry about the 2 other girls who were still clueless about everything. Together, Vida and Sarah devised a plan to trick the others into drinking the antidote. Once they saw the 2 girls drink the cure, Vida felt a sense of relief. She and Sarah split up, putting their rescue plan into motion. Sarah would stay behind to watch over the 2 girls and keep an eye on the men, signaling Vida if they came back. Meanwhile, Vida would try to recover their phones. The moment Vida stepped into Slater's place, her nose started to bleed, and fragments of last night's memories rushed back into her mind. But it was all just bits and pieces, nothing that made sense. Outside, Sarah, who was keeping lookout, also began to bleed from her nose. The strain of the partial memory showed on her face as she grimaced in pain. Spotting the group of men approaching in the distance, Sarah quickly plastered a smile on her face. She couldn't afford to act suspiciously before they regained control of the situation. Vida, meanwhile, was searching Slater's office for the phones. Sarah saw Slater heading toward the house and began calling out a signal, but she was too far away for Vida to hear. Vida grabbed a phone to dial the police, but there was no signal. Panic surged through Sarah as Slater moved closer to the house. She shouted the signal even louder, hoping to warn Vida. Just as Slater was about to enter the building, Vida finally heard Sarah's voice from outside. She quickly scrambled to restore everything to its original place and hid herself. Slater entered the office and glanced around. He didn't notice anything out of place, and just as he was about to leave, he stopped in his tracks. Vida, crouched under the desk, was filled with dread. It turned out Slater had noticed the sofa was slightly out of place. At that moment, Vida's head began to swim again, and she started bleeding from her nose once more. More vivid fragments of memory flashed before her eyes. She saw herself and the other girls tied up, helpless on the ground. She remembered the men violently abusing them, and all the missing pieces of her memory flooded back at once. Vida now knew the horrifying truth. She fought to control her emotions. Her suspicions had been correct. All of them had their memories erased. But what she hadn't fully realized until now was just how monstrous these men were. Not only had they wiped their memories, but they were also trying to manipulate and control their minds. Poor Jess had been killed by these men. Seizing a moment when the men were distracted, Vida managed to sneak out of the building. When Sarah saw her emerge, she finally relaxed a little. The 2 of them kept smiling, pretending everything was normal. Knowing the phones were useless without a signal, they decided to take it one step at a time. After all, they had no idea when the other 2 girls would fully wake up from the fog. At dinner, Vida and Sarah kept up the charade, acting as if everything was fine. During the meal, Vida caught sight of the necklace around Cody's neck, and suddenly, her memory came flooding back entirely. Every night, these men had taken advantage of the girls, overpowering them with brute strength. This place was nothing short of hell on earth. During the day, they created a fake paradise for the girls, making them forget the horrors of the night. But in the morning, the evidence was still there: mud under their fingernails, bruises on their arms, and even rope marks around their necks. All of it now made sense. It was an agonizing realization, but they had to keep up the pretense of happiness. When Slater came close, Vida struggled to suppress her fear, but it was hard to hide her growing terror. He had no idea the storm that was about to hit him. Suddenly, Camilla, who had been pouring herself a drink, started to bleed from her nose. The moment her memories came rushing back, she broke down in tears. Suddenly a scream came. Camilla, who has regained her memory, has killed the chubby guy with a knife. Jack rushes over to help, but at that moment Heather also fully recovers her memories. Panicking, Jack tries to flee, but Sarah snaps. Unable to bear the humiliation any longer, she drives a corkscrew into Cody, his screams piercing the night air. Heather, lying in wait, ambushes Jack, hitting him hard. Before he can react, she grabs a rock and smashes it against him over and over. Just when they think they've avenged themselves, the guards arrive and Heather loses her life. Vida escapes into the woods, exhausted and desperate to move quietly. She steps on a branch, the cracking sound immediately setting her on edge. Turning to check behind her, she's relieved not to see anyone following, but in the next instant, she's face to face with one of the guards. Vida is captured, but Sarah comes just in time to take out the guard. Meanwhile, Slater drags the injured guests into his office. Watching Camilla's crazed state, he presses his foot against her throat, coldly watching her life drain away. He sends Cody into the woods to hunt down the two girls, but Cody is already weakened by his injuries and quickly falls to Sarah's hand. Vida returns to the room, searching for the special knife hidden behind the mirror, but she trips, scattering the photos she was hiding in her chest. Among them, she notices a photo of herself with long, flowing hair. Had she been here before? Realizing she had experienced all of this before, Vida and Sarah decide to take the offensive. They pretend to be scared and knock on the door, hoping to trick one of the men into opening it. Against Slater's advice, kind-hearted Lewis insists on helping the girls and opens the door, only to be shot by Sarah from afar. Slater seizes the opportunity to drag Vida into the room. As he advances on her, he picks up a heavy ornament and swings it at her. During their struggle, they knock over a cabinet filled with photo albums. Memories flash through Vida's mind. She had been here 2 years ago, with her long hair and familiar camera. The same horrifying experience. While running back then, she had tripped, smashing her face against a rock. Slater had tied her up, and she had seen the bunny-shaped manicure on her hand. Now, she finally understood the meaning of the little red bunny the old woman mentioned.
You having a good time?
I'm having a great
2 years ago, Vida had regained her memories and bitten off Jack's pinky finger during his attack. That's why Jack had been so afraid to approach her this time. As Slater gloated about his research, Vida silently picked up a shard of glass and tried to cut herself free. Outside, Sarah became frantic as Vida hadn't returned. She tried to break the door open, but when her bullets ran out, the door remained closed. Slater heard the shot stop and realized what had happened. He ran out after Sarah, who hid in the pool, but he quickly dragged her back by her hair and tied her up just like Vida. Although Vida had freed her hands, she still couldn't summon the courage to stop the deranged Slater. Just as the blade was about to slice Sarah's throat, Slater suddenly stopped. He looked down at the knife confused, and started to ask what was going on. He stumbled around the room, lost in thought, before tripping and hitting his head on the table, knocking himself out. It turns out that Vida had slipped perfume into Slater's e-cigarette when he chased Sarah earlier. One puff, and all his memories were wiped clean. In the end, Vida and Sarah escape.
You sure you know what you're doing?
Vida drags the unconscious Slater out. A month later, at a charity event, Slater reappears, but his personality seems completely different. Vida has become Mrs. Slater, using the perfume on him to take control of his wealth and status. The movie ends here. It's clear that the story draws inspiration from real-life events, where many women at bars or parties can't remember what happened to them because certain drugs are used to erase their memories, turning them into tools for predators. However, we can't forget that the initial downfall comes from not knowing how to refuse temptations. In the end, it's a case of willingly walking into the trap. The movie sends a message about vigilance. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.